Okay, folks, so this is what's new in V7, which is the unhedging function in version 7, the version 7 bots for Onyx and Eagle. And here is a quick rundown on how to use this function in terms of the setting itself. So if you don't know what a unhedging function is, watch the earlier videos that talk about that. But now let's dive into this unhedging, right? So if the price gets up to here and you want to unhedge this position, there must be some settings to trigger the unhedge to turn on and trigger the unhedge to turn off. So the trigger to turn the unhedging on is this orange box here, which you can set a positive value or a negative value, right? This is the minimum buffer, or in terms of the settings, it's called the unhedged trigger buffer, right? And you can set a positive value or a negative value. Suppose you set a positive value, it's going to be on top of this anchor line. And then as the price turns around, so once the price crosses this orange line, the unhedged function is turned on. And to turn on, when you turn on the unhedged function, it means to say if the price reverses, you're going to unhedge that trade, and therefore the stop loss has to be put in place. So once it's turned on, the stop loss kicks in, and this stop loss value can be set to plus or minus 1, or potentially plus minus 1% of the trade gap, right? That you use. So when the price turns around and crosses the stop loss, you would unhedge that position that you have entered. So that is the unhedged trailing stop loss, right? Which is this red color box here, which can be set to positive or negative. The third thing that you need to set is actually the maximum buffer, which you can set to 0.5, which means it's 50% of the trade gap. Now, this maximum buffer is important to set because if the price continues to go up and crosses the green line, then you do not want this stop loss to continue to persist. So if the price crosses the green line and turns around, or when it crosses the green line, the stop loss is removed from the trade setup, such that if the price turns around again and crosses the black line, there is no stop loss. So this position will not be unhedged. This function of the maximum buffer is a critical function. In earlier testing, when we went without the maximum buffer, there is a potential danger of the trades continuously unhedging and re-entering the market over and over again, and therefore causing the trade gap, which is the distance between these two lines, to keep expanding, and therefore making it very difficult for the hedging bot to finally take profit. So these are the settings, and I circle back to the beginning. So to turn on the unhedging, you have to turn this switch to 1, set it to 1 to turn it on, and then you need to decide at which level you are going to start this unhedging function. So here is a good example of the Onyx and the Eagle. This is the lot size increase as we go through the levels, and you can then decide at which level do you want to get started. Please do not put 1. The smallest number you should start with is a 2, right? Either a 2 or 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Depending on how much floating loss you're willing to take before you want the unhedging function to kick in. So most users typically would set it at 2 so that you always have the unhedging triggered right from level 2. Or if you want to be a bit more aggressive, you will let this start at 4 or 6. So those are the general guidelines and view in terms of how to use and set the values of the unhedged function. One last thing to take note is that typically if you set the buffer to be negative, that means to say that once the trade is entered, the stop loss is in place. So remember, because of that, your stop loss must always be smaller than your buffer. So if the buffer is 5, your stop loss can be 2 or 1. If your buffer is -1, then your stop loss needs to be -2 or -3 or -4, so that you do not have a situation whereby every time the price hits the buffer, as the price continues to go up, your stop loss is on top, and therefore you hit the stop loss and you exit the trade, and the bot will re-enter a pending order, and if the price continues to go up, the pending order would be triggered, and then because the buffer is negative, straight away your stop loss would be placed on top of your entry, and if the price continues to go up, you will stop yourself out. So then you would be fulfilling this or you will be encouraging the situation whereby your trade gap is increasing continuously because you have made the settings that way, and that is the wrong way to set it up. All right.